Okay, I am new to Bookstagram, so I'm doing my first Bookstagram book review, which I'm very excited about. And my first book is How Beautiful We Were by Mbolo Mbue. This book is set in the fictional African village of Kaswa. It tells a story of people suffering from the environmental damage caused by an American oil company. So pipeline spills, we meet the characters, pipeline spills have rendered their farmlands infertile, children are dying from drinking toxic water, which sadly sounds very familiar. The village leader has been bought off by the company, and so he's leaving the villagers to be strung along the continued false promises of reparations and change until one day one of the villagers stirs them into action. And so starts a many decade-long journey to fight against this oil company. And the story is told through the eyes of the villager, including a girl named Dula, who grows up to be a revolutionary. And so this is their story, the story of their life and the story of this fight. So I won't give any spoilers, but a couple of key takeaways or thoughts I had. This story is really as devastating as it is inspirational. So in a world of clickbaits and headlines, I think we tend to focus on, the current circumstances without taking the time to understand how we got there or understanding how long the journey is. So revolution doesn't just happen. And this one is obviously fictional, but you have to recognize how long it takes a character to really get to even a place of action. She grows up seeing what happens. She gets a chance to go to school in the city. She's in the city, New York City, there for 8 years, where she learns about, how to organize and how to fight back. And she comes back to her village, hoping to fight for them. And she's home for, 6 or 7 years before she even starts to see real progress in her efforts. And so obviously during this time, people have died, they've had babies, people have moved on, life has continued to happen, even though this horrible thing is happening as a backdrop, but life hasn't stood still, kind of waiting for the big moment. So her commitment to change is really inspirational, but the harsh reality of how hard it is to actually affect change is really devastating. I also loved some of the culture clash moments when she comes to New York or learns about, things happening in New York City and the contrast between that and her village experience and how some of the city things seem so silly, like having names on streets. You kind of see that from the flip of Americans coming to certain countries and not understanding how things are. So I appreciated seeing the opposite perspective. But my big takeaway is I really appreciated getting to see the arc of all of the characters' lives here. So the children, I feel like, are the main focus, and Thula in particular. You do have some adults, but you really get to have this kind of full picture of someone's life in a book. And I feel like the characters are really well developed. You feel their struggles, their sadness, all the phases they go through, and you get a sense of how resilient they are and the joy they try to keep infusing to keep themselves going. So this is a book you had to really stick with because of the detail of the character development and the pacing of it. But once you get invested into the characters, I think you're probably happy to oblige. So I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. You should take a look.